Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you for coming to this first session of the day. I have a number of slides here. I want to go through them fairly quickly, if that's all right with you. And I hope that this will be meaningful and helpful to you. So thanks for coming. Indeed, my name is John Jalsevac, and what I want to do today is to speak about this journey that children are on, from the youngest who enter our school to those who graduate from our school. I've worked for many years in Hong Kong, for 17 years in fact, 10 years at Canadian International School, and I saw at that school a number of students who spent all 13, 14, 15 years of their education in one school. And we saw them come in as 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds. This girl on the left is Yan Yan, who is a student of ours when we opened in 2016. That was on the very first day the school opened, the very first time I saw a student wear a uniform at our school. And she is now in grade 4, and the girl on the right is Daisy, and behind her is Hermione, and they will be our members of our first graduating class. And somewhere between when that young person comes in and when do they leave, we have this idea that what we're trying to do is, of course, educate them and prepare them for the world outside, but we have this nobler cause. What we want to do can be summarized, in my opinion, in these kind of 3 little phrases. The self-actualized, critical thinking, problem solver. The self-actualization, I'll speak about in a moment's time and explain to you what it is I want to do. But first of all, a little bit of background of our school and so on. As I said, I came in 2004. I've been here 17 years. I worked for a number of years in secondary schools in Canada, was a superintendent of education, and then came to CDNIS, opened Bromsgrove International School in Shenzhen, and have been the founding director at American School Hong Kong. We are a member of the ESOL Education. They have 10 schools. Most of them are in the Gulf region, in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Egypt. I've been to 3 or 4 of them. They're excellent schools, big schools, well-resourced, good population, good buildings, and I'm proud to be a member of these schools. This shows the location of where many of them, or where all of them are. One thing that I know to be of importance is a kind of destination pathways. Where do kids go who leave those schools? Do they stay local? Do they go to surrounding countries and so on? My experience in Hong Kong is that 90% of the graduates that come out of international schools go to principally US, Canada, or UK. And what we have seen from the ESOL Education Network in the schools there, these are destinations where some of the best universities in the world, top-tier universities, where kids have gone in the most recent years. And again, you see a lot of US, Canada, UK institutions. We opened with 91 students from kindergarten to grade 6. We've added a year at a time, 7, 8, 9. We're now up to 10. Next year we will add grade 11, the first year of the IB diploma program. I'm a bit warm. Is this room warm? Excuse me, I'll just take my jacket off if you don't mind. This population has grown steadily from 91 to 173 to 223, 300, and then a little blip on the road this year, which everyone is experiencing with the coronavirus. But I think we're back on track next year, and we'll see that number grow substantially again. When we opened, we had 16 teachers. We now have 42, so it's nice to see this place come alive with more people, more options, more courses, more activities for students in the school. We have been accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, which is an American association, along with the Middle States Association. So it gives us call it the right to award to our graduates the equivalent of an American high school diploma. And we will, in March, receive our final accreditation from the IB to offer the IB diploma program. If you came to the school, you have to take my word, and I'm there every day, and I feel very strongly and passionately about this, that you would see evidence of a strong sense of community, a very positive and enjoyable atmosphere. We do that deliberately and intentionally, and we don't do it because we just want kids to feel good, although there's nothing wrong with that. We do that in part because the research says that when students feel good about their school experience, they perform better academically, and that stands to reason. That's quite logical. Very interested in a holistic approach to teaching and learning, where we don't only focus on intellectual development, but we place significant attention to the what we call academic, social, emotional, and physical needs of students. I've worked in 9 schools. I know what good schools look like. I know what the research says about good schools. I think there's an alignment between what I believe and what the research says. And the qualities of effective schools, there's about 3 or 4 or 5 of them that always appear in the research. And one of them is that those schools have a very clear and shared focus. In other words, the philosophy is understood. The mission is clear. People know what they're doing. We know what our curriculum is. We know what our intentions are. This shows staff working and planning to ensure that our focus remains clear to everyone. Effective schools have high expectations and standards from from both sides of the continuum, from the weakest student to the strongest student. We're not just trying to get a student into an Ivy League school. The fact is that most will not get into Ivy League schools. We're trying to move the weakest students to something that allows them to gain access to a rich university that beforehand was not within their grasp. And it's our goal to help all students with high expectation standards. We want to have a warm and welcoming environment, very invitational, where the smile index is quite high. A facility aligned to best practice programs. We inherited a building. We were successful with a bid that 40 other schools or groups bid for. The government awarded it to us. It needed extensive renovation. And we have completed ground 1, 2, 3, 4. In December, we will start renovations on the 5th floor. That gym was a mess when we got into it. It had a stage, it had a balcony, we put all new windows, floors, ceiling, air conditioned lights, everything. And we've done the same thing with every classroom, every washroom, every facility, or every room, within the facility. This shows some of the plans for the library that's part of the expansion on the 5th floor, which will start at Christmas and be ready for August as we grow our secondary school and add grade 11 next year. Community park is being built adjacent to the school, which will frame the whole site much nicer. That site under construction was a car park. So it's nice now that we're going to see a park feature with new landscaping and fencing and places where our kids can go and use facilities as well. As I may have introduced, or you would have, I think, have some understanding of, we are an American school. Our curriculum is American-based. Our teachers and their schooling are, for the most part, 90% American or Canadian experience and based. So let me now get to the essence of my presentation, which speaks about this journey, and come back to that, and this notion of traveling students from young, eager learner to self-actualized, critical thinking problem solver. It's a little bit about self-actualization. This notion that it speaks to morality, creativity, spontaneity, and problem solving. Schools, let me take a step backward. My mother once asked me, and it was a bit startling. She says, "So, John, what is it? What is it that you want your students to graduate with? To have, a kind of an understanding of? What is it that's at the core of the work that you do? You've been doing this for 40 years. What do you believe passionately in?" And I thought about that because, we get wrapped up in curriculum, we get wrapped up in approaches to teaching and learning, but central to that is this kind of underpinning, this philosophical base that I have, which says that we want children to become self-actualized, to stand with confidence, to articulate a view, to be balanced, to be principled, to use logic and reason and knowledge, to think critically, to be creative, and to have values and a kind of a moral compass, which the world, one might argue, is sadly lacking. So it doesn't just happen by chance. You don't just teach geography and math and it happens. It has to be something that's part of the fabric of your school and the culture of your school. I want to speak to you about that and show you how certain things tie in to lead us back to that. Starts with a mission statement. In Goldenrod, it says that we want to empower students to be independent critical thinkers and responsible global citizens. If we focus only on remembering or knowledge, they're not going to move up that pyramid. They're going to be quite informed, and if you talk to them at a cocktail party later, you might say, "That guy's really smart. He knows a lot." But knowing a lot doesn't necessarily equate to being able to understand or apply that knowledge, or to evaluate or assess that knowledge, or to, in the greatest part of the pyramid, to create something new. Further to that, what we do in terms of developing critical thinking skills is to activate it within the classroom, within the curriculum. If we spend time on the knowledge realm, on the far left side of that picture, we will ask students in terms of the action verbs, the things that we ask kids to do 100 times a day, we will ask them to name that, list that, find that. Tell me what the factors are that affect climate. Oh, sir, I know, it's prevailing winds, it's ocean currents. Sure, good, you know it. But what we want to do is really transfer that into those higher order critical thinking skills to get them to apply it, to analyze it. And so those action verbs are now prioritize, justify, design, invent. And those are purposeful, and those are intentional, and they're part of our curriculum. Our curriculum comes from American standards. The U.S. Common Core gives us our literacy standards and our math standards. The next generation science standards gives us obviously our science standards. But the important thing is this. When I went to school, the emphasis was on the knowledge, on the know part. And now what those standards require students to do is to identify what they should be able to do with that knowledge and how they should communicate. I'm speaking to you about how we transition a child to self-actualization, to critical thinking problem solver. If we focused only on knowledge, we wouldn't be able to do that. If our mission statement says we must do more, then we get the standards that ask them to identify what to do with that and how to communicate that. Switching gears, this is our learner profile. If you looked at those attributes and you saw that your son or daughter could tick off, the box on most of those, I think you'd be happy as a parent. You'd say, I've done a good job. The schools have done a good job. My child is balanced. My child is caring. My child is creative. It's internationally minded. Many schools have these learner profile attributes. In fact, every IB school in the world has the learner profile attribute. But if you just hang those banners in your gym and you don't pay attention to them, you're not really building upon what they can provide for you. So they are call it these aspirational attributes. It really is the mission statement come alive. It gives us something to speak to address in our curriculum. They speak also to this notion of global citizenship. At the end, to help create a better or more peaceful world. That's not pie in the sky. That is real stuff that 8-year-olds and 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds can learn about and buy into and subscribe to. And so with respect to the learner profile attributes, we want to ensure that they are intentional, infused in our curriculum, embedded in our classroom management, and measurable. If someone came to me and said, okay, you teach learner profile attributes, how do you know you do a good job? When we get inspected by accrediting associations, they ask that question. Show us where you teach it and how it's measurable and how you can demonstrate to me that a child has grown in that regard. And we have that. We have to show that. We believe in that. The attributes further shape our commitment to service learning, our focus on international mindedness. These are activities. All these pictures are from students in our school, of activities, of things that we've done in our school. Our interest in robust experiential learning opportunities, which unfortunately no schools are involved in right now. It's quite sad that we can't do those types of things that really make a school that much more a dynamic place. And pathways to grow in independence. Kids arriving at camp, they don't arrive with those tents set up. They arrive and are told to set up the tents. They don't arrive in the kitchen and eat their meal and then leave. They arrive in the kitchen, eat their meal, and then they clean up. They help with all of that. We want them to grow in independence and to learn more about taking ownership and responsibility for themselves and for their education. And a Week Without Walls overseas service learning trip that our kids annually go on, but won't likely this year because of coronavirus. I talked about the mission statement, the learner profile, a little bit about STEAM, and then I have one more. STEAM, I think that description there is a good thing because it speaks to this notion of innovation, how quickly and rapidly things are changing this world as economies have transitioned, government, industry, school, business has transitioned. If you're not an innovative person, a creative person, you may get left behind. My son-in-law is a engineer, software developer and engineer for a startup. They were a startup. He was employee number one, hired at a company in the Silicon Valley. Been with the company for a number of years. They now have 700 engineers. And I say to him, what is it that you look for? Well, he says, he talked about problem solvers. That's what we do all day. We solve problems. We're looking for creative people who know how to innovate, who know how to take various knowledge pieces and use that to find a solution to fix a problem or to find a better way of doing things. So STEM started this in the early 90s. The States was falling behind in science advancement, where for so many years they were a leader. And a number of educational gurus got together and thought that we have to do something about this. And one approach was to introduce STEM at schools, to integrate or connect the sciences and the maths, and not just teach them in isolation, but look where integration can help you build capacity in kids. And along came a professor at the Rhode Island Institute of Art and Design, and he said, well, you're missing something if you don't add the A, the arts piece. And he didn't mean just pure and applied arts, drawing. That's not, he meant the creative element. If you ask an architect to design a house for you, the first thing they'll do is produce a sketch. Of course, they know all the mechanical parts of it, but you want to hear, well, what's your creative vision? What's your design? What's your thinking about it? So many schools have something similar. Project-based learning, a PYP program, a STEM program, a STEM-in program. At our school, we have a STEAM program, which is this integrative approach to teaching and learning, to get kids to work together in teams and to design the development of these 21st century skills, which is I'll show that in its place. This is a design cycle that we use when we do STEM and STEAM activities. Students work in teams quite regularly within a STEAM program. And there's a lot of research on teams that says they design quicker, they work better, a huge amount of leverage in that regard at our school in terms of getting kids to work and find better results. So this is what I was addressing earlier. These are the top 10 skills needed in 2020 according to the World Economic Forum. Again, consistent with our mission statement, consistent with the learner profile attributes, and something that STEAM addresses. We still teach science and math separate, but we often integrate them in a STEAM program. So the best of really, in my opinion, both were strong foundational skills, but then integrated and to look at the opportunity to combine these elements. We spent a lot of time lately because of e-learning in this notion here of getting kids to buy into, you can learn while you are at home in a different place. The transition of the learning space from the conventional classroom to your home, to your living room, to your bedroom, to your computer. For better or for worse, it is a new reality. Schools are evolving. We found out on Friday at 12 o'clock that our grade 1 to 3 students will no longer for 2 weeks be able to come to school. Many of you would have children in the same boat. So we had to mobilize very quickly to gather materials to send kids home with either their laptop or their iPad and learning materials, post the e-learning schedules, change the program from face-to-face delivery to e-learning, and get up and running as quickly as you can for the start of next week. We've done it 3 times now. We're used to it. Kids, I think, are fairly used to it. What it is that we're doing throughout this, though, is that we are also transitioning the learner to the top of that critical thinking pyramid, to that creativity realm, if you think of that pyramid that I showed earlier. And we have these, what we refer to as foundational building blocks. We do it in the classroom. We can do it at home with the nature of the activities that we engage our students in. These blocks refer to communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking. Think of it, in this regard. If communication is to get kids to articulate their thoughts and listen and communicate for a purpose and work with shared ideas, we do this through various platforms, be it Zoom, Google applications, Seesaw discussions, to make the learning still dynamic, collective, alive, even if they're home and we're in the school building. In terms of collaborate, we use many of the same platforms. And creativity, A huge amount of progress has been made in that regard to get kids to think in that manner while still working independently at home, but in the collective with the others who are at their homes as well. And finally, in critical thinking, a fair amount is involved in this middle bullet there, which we want them to evaluate evidence, arguments, claims, beliefs. And we can still do that in this e-learning realm. The possibilities are really unlimited. And you can shape it to fit your understanding, your grade level, your individual students. In closing, I want to say, and I know I've moved quickly, but I hope that this has been a fast pace for you to get you started during the day and that you have a good, productive day. We have an elementary school, K to 5. It's a welcoming and child-centered place, a place that we're really proud of and what we've been able to accomplish at the school in the 4 years we've been in operation. We have a secondary school that right now is 6 to 10. Next year it'll be 6 to 11, and the following year 6 to 12, with an IB diploma program in the last 2 years. We take kids in that middle age group, over this kind of runway, this sometimes very bouncy adolescent development curve. For some, it's quite straight. For some, there are little dips. And I've worked at this for a long time with this age group. For a small number, there are huge crevices and valleys that they have to go through. And we have to, as adults, model reason and logic and caring and warmth, and kind of a can-do attitude with them. The IB diploma program is, in my opinion, the best university preparatory program that exists. I've worked in 3 IB schools. I've led the implementation in now this, our 3rd school. I'm very familiar with the components and aspects of it. I think one of the strengths is that it's a liberal arts program. It requires you to maintain a foothold in 6 subject areas. Whereas in A-levels, you can decide as a 15 or 16-year-old that you're going to drop math or drop science or drop English because depending on what you think you're going to be studying at university, which you may, but you may drop because 30% of kids switch their majors when they get to university. So I think you're better positioned if you go into university with an underpinning in a variety of subject areas. And IB requires you to have those experiences in English, a second language, a maths, a science, a humanities, and an arts. There's a lot of research conducted by university admission officers around the world and by DP alumni students, which speaks to what I want to close with, which is what I began with. We're taking kids on a journey from eager, self-starter, young, innocent person, and they remain innocent throughout, I hope, but we're taking them to this self-actualized critical thinking problem solver. The IB is the culminating event that leads them in that regard. I want to thank you for attending this presentation. I will be here for much of the day, and if you have any questions, please come by and visit our booth. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.